welcome to another episode of Control Alt Access. It's a video and audio podcast about video game accessibility. I'm one of your hosts, Laura. I'm here as ever with my lovely co-host, Arevia. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. Laura, how are you holding up?
I'm doing good. It suddenly became summer here in the UK this week.
Oh, so lovely.
We went from the depths of winter to very strong summer basically overnight,
Oh,
and
lovely.
it's taken me a day or two to get used to it, but it's pretty good.
Yeah, no, I live in Norway. It is like one day rain from hell, parts of Norway having snow. The other day is just like, we're going to sear you. It's going to like feel like the devil's bottom. Like, and it's nothing in between. So yay.
Yeah, we've had like a couple of days of consistent sunshine, and that doesn't mean it'll actually be summer here in the UK because, you know, it'll go back to winter anytime it damn well wants to.
Yes.
But it's been enough days of sunshine that my body's like gotten out of the it's winter and I want to hibernate.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm opening back up. If I were a flower, I'd be starting to bloom. I'm like, yes. So, have you been playing much I was going to say last couple of weeks, I guess this last month, because we didn't talk about things we played last episode.
Yeah, well, yeah, I should have thought what I played before GA Conf as well. Before GA Conf, I had just played Schedule 1. Did we talk about that last time? I think so.
Oh, we did a little bit, yeah.
I played Schedule 1 until, like, I could not breathe anymore because I had only consumed that. And then Oblivion came out. And as a massive fan of Skyrim, and I've talked about this before, like, where I once a year, like, just wakes up going like, oh, it's Skyrim time. And then I, for 2 weeks, just disappear off the face of Earth because I'm only playing Skyrim. This has been like a breath of fresh air because I have never played Oblivion before. When I grew up, I did not have like a fancy computer that could take a game like this. And the neighbor kid who had it was just like, no, this game is not for girls. Oh, I don't want you to play. Yeah. So I ended up never playing it growing up. So then for me, this is just like getting a Skyrim again. And I've had a lot of fun, and I am happy to see that they have added a lot of accessibility, or not a lot, but some accessibility in a new game. It's actually helped me quite a lot.
Yeah, what sort of stuff have they added?
So I think the coolest thing I have seen is that they have added a possibility to do a clairvoyance spell, and this spell does not cost anything, and you have it from the start. So this is like a start thing. Every character have it, no matter what race you are, or faction, or anything. You have this spell, and it's a spell where for 30 seconds on the map a blue line will come out, and then you can follow that blue line, that like a blue path, to your next quest. And since Oblivion only have the possibility to one quest at a time, it just shows you where to go next. And for me, that is a win.
That is wonderful. I was really worried when you said it was a spell, because my brain went... I instantly started thinking about that Pokemon Sword and Shield, where to change the audio sliders, you had to go find an NPC who gave you an item.
Yeah.
But to hear that it's like, oh, by default everyone has it, it's just there, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, that's great.
And it also actually explains it. Not that I saw that, because is as in every new RPG, they are overwhelming. And I actually didn't like know about this before I saw somebody retweet Bethesda who made post about it. The weird thing is that Bethesda didn't call it accessibility, but hey, maybe a win is a win. I don't know.
It's one of those things where it's like... there was a conversation about this during one of the talks at GA Conf about sometimes it's easier to smuggle in accessibility features if you make them an in-universe mechanic and you don't draw attention to the fact it's accessibility, like the detective vision in the Batman games.
Yes.
It's like, no, this is just a new spell you have, wink wink.
Yes. Yeah, and like at the same time also with all the discourse online, some words is just like, sadly, when you say the word accessibility, some people will just be angry and mean. And I can to some degree understand that not every social media manager always want to do it, but I also think it might just be we don't know this is accessibility.
Part of me thinks it's similar to when we see something like the Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown with the pinning screenshots to your map.
Yeah,
it's sometimes the approach to accessibility is, rather than putting it as a labeled accessibility feature, is we're going to try and normalize this thing and not draw attention to the fact that that's what it is. It's like, no, it's just a thing that you have. In order to not scare away people who will, if they hear the word accessibility, go, oh, that's not for me, I don't need that.
Yeah, 100%.
And go, no, you're allowed to use it. It's just a spell in your inventory. Why wouldn't you use it?
Yeah, and I think that is like, it's fair. It's fair game. The people who needs it, they need it, and they will use it, and that is all that matters. I've actually used it a lot, because compared to Skyrim, where your maps are quite actually well drawn out, in this game, your map are just the overview of the world map. You can zoom in and zoom out, and you get a lot of more icons for different things on your map than before. But it is, you cannot like zoom into a city and like directly see what is happening in each city like that what we did in Skyrim. The same with dungeons. And also, because this is an old game, right? It's 20 years old or something, the original one. There is a lot of the same things. So when you're in a dungeon, sometimes it's a bit hard to know where to go, because they have used the same assets over and over and over again. The like what we used to today with like everything have to look a bit different, and sort of how it looks in Skyrim, where everything feels a bit unique, that is not in Oblivion. So having a spell like this that can help you to where to go, so you don't just run around in a circle, is actually just genius. But the funny thing is that, though, because it's added on afterwards and it's not part of the like the original set, sometimes this spell, it doesn't give a fuck. It sends you to hell sometimes. It's just like, oh, you want to go to there? Well, have you tried going over the sea? Oh, you want to go here? Have you tried just like go over the cliff? Have you tried that? Like, just go down this cliff. There is a road on the side here that would perfectly fine get you down with no health problems. But no, jump off the cliff. So it is a show of like accessibility can be hard afterwards, but it works, right? Like it works well. And yeah, there is also a lot of like things I wish they had fixed on, like their subtitles isn't fixed. It's a bit annoying because when you're in the city, sometimes as these RPGs, they sort of let you you hear somebody say something, like you hear NPC say something and then you get a quest. But not everything of that isn't subtitled, because it's a bit weird when the subtitles is triggered and not. Keep in mind though, this is not like Final Fantasy. This is not a remake. This is a remaster. They have literally just taken the original code and put it in a new engine, and then go in and like fixed it like to make it work for the most part. And then some of it has been upgraded. So some of the voiceovers have been upgraded. Of course, like the how everything looks has been upgraded. But it is the original game. Like this isn't no, they haven't sat down and coded the game from the start again. This is the original game, and that includes all its bugs, all its problems, all its everything like that. But as an old person in the gaming industry, since like over 30, you make you get to feel like you're old. I actually enjoy this, and I know I don't know if this is just copium or whatever it is, but I actually do enjoy it. Like when I see like a stone just floating there, I just laugh and go like, oh yeah, good old game. Which is weird. I should be annoyed that things aren't fixed. Like when I saw like a horse ended up going like upside down, flickering around on top of a house, and I was just like, yes, now I'm home. This is old school gaming at its finest. It should not be like that. So yeah, who knows, maybe I'm coping a bit too much, but I am having fun, and that's the most important part of it.
Hurrah. Have you played anything else, or has that been your big one for the recent weeks?
That has been me. I have been icky, sticky goblin just sitting here. This is the first day I've actually looked like a human. I have just been a stinking gaming girl for 2 weeks. So no, Oblivion. All the Oblivion.
I have been similarly a little gaming goblin, but on the other end, I've been the sort of like a dragon hoarding my pile of treasure, being like, more games, more games. I've played too many games recently. I have a big list of things I've played, and I'm probably not going to talk about all of them, but I'm trying to work out where I should prioritize. So I've not talked about this on Control Alt Access yet, I don't think. I played the Switch 2
Yes.
for like 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah.
I think it was just before GA Conf happened, so we haven't talked about it on the show yet. Yeah, the Switch 2 is really interesting from an accessibility perspective, and I want to talk about it a bit. So, I played multiple hours across several games. General thoughts on the hardware. I was surprised by how lightweight the Switch 2 feels.
Yeah.
It is larger than the original Switch, but it's the same thickness. And it doesn't feel heavier.
Oh.
The thing I'd been concerned about from an accessibility perspective initially was removing the new Joy-Cons, because they're connected by magnets. Because in my head I was like, either they're not going to be particularly strongly connected to the console, or they're going to be really hard to take off.
Yeah.
And they're not. I don't understand this, because this doesn't align with my understanding of how magnets work. When you put them on, they clip on really easily. Like, they clip into place supernaturally. The person... I had, like, a test unit, and the Nintendo person was like, try pulling it off just with force. I couldn't just yank it off.
That's good, though.
You press a little button at the top of the Joy-Con, and it just... The top pops out at a 45-degree angle really easily, and it's as if no magnets are holding it on at all. And I don't understand how that works.
Science.
Science. So yeah, like, it doesn't seem like there's going to be a lot of physical force required to remove the Joy-Cons in terms of strength, but there is a slight rotational element at the top end of the Joy-Con to remove them. So be aware of a slight turning of the wrist that's probably going to be part of that action. In terms of games that I played, I'm not going to talk about every single one in depth. I will talk about the ones that are like relevant from an accessibility perspective. Donkey Kong Bannanza, the game where you play as Donkey Kong, like destroying the environment, punching through rock walls and everything. Very fun. Feels like a very good Incredible Hulk game. There is something about that game's... I don't know if it's the frame rate or the way that the game... Whenever you do big punches, it sort of stops for a second to emphasize the hit of the punch. It's a third-person adventure game from Nintendo that made me feel kind of motion sick.
Ooh.
And that doesn't usually happen with Nintendo. And apparently I'm not alone in this. I was watching... who was it I was watching? I was watching a video game reporter on YouTube the other day talking about the fact that when he went on one of the Sunday visits to the London Hands-On, a Nintendo member of staff asked as he sat down, "Are you prone to motion sickness? This has been a problem for some people this weekend."
Oh.
So, like, apparently Nintendo's aware that it's causing motion sickness issues for some people. We'll see whether that is resolved by the time the game comes out, but that is a thing. I had some motion sickness issues with it, and reportedly Nintendo was aware enough of it to warn other people later about that.
Yeah, because that's not good on their, like, flagship game of this Switch.
Yeah. Mario Kart World, no complaints about. The thing I will basically say about it is it's the main game that I got to play in like 120 FPS mode in handheld, and that looks really, really smooth.
That's cool.
The new knockout mode, where it's like a battle royale, and every X number, and every time you pass a checkpoint, like the last 6 people at the back of the race get kicked out, and you're trying to be the last one standing. That's really fun. I appreciate for such a long race, because it's like a 15-minute long single race. They're very good about, if you're either like a very low number like at the back of the race, or if you're a low enough number that like at the next checkpoint you would get kicked out. The game gives you so many really good items to catch up.
Good.
Like the game never wants you to feel like I'm so far back that there's no chance of
Yeah.
me staying in.
That's good though, because it is annoying playing those games and you're doing good and then everybody else just quits because they're just like, no, I don't want to then.
Yeah, exactly. This feels really well built to avoid that, and much like a standard Mario Kart race, if you're in first, you are constantly at risk of getting hit by blue shells and things. So it always feels like if you're in first, you could suddenly be in the I'm about to get demoted zone if you're not careful.
Yeah.
If you're at the back, there's always a chance of you getting back into the safe zone. It feels very well balanced around that, which is really nice. I can also confirm that you can use the driving assist features while in that online multiplayer mode. So things like automatic acceleration, steering assist are still in the game, and can be used in the online competitive modes, which is good. We should probably talk about drag and drive because that had some controversy around that. I'll talk about the game itself first. So this is the one that was the wheelchair basketball game, and playing it feels really intuitive. As someone who has an understanding of how a manual wheelchair works, this very much feels the way you would expect controlling a manual wheelchair to work. And that's really fun. It's really satisfying. It's really nice having a game that is so tactilely just about using that method of control to move around the court. I like that it's that when you're throwing the ball through the net, you don't have to be precise with, like... It's not about how precisely you aim your throw exactly for where the net is. It's the closer you are to the net, the higher the percentage chance that the ball will go in. And it looks at, like, the strength of how you throw it, but it's not, I'm having to precisely left-right aim it exactly right. And I think that's a good level of precision to ask. I do think this game is going to need some kind of accessibility control scheme for a... It's tiring as hell to play. It is a lot of hard work, much like I imagine doing wheelchair basketball would be. It is strenuous on your arms to do like a very intense 3-minute go, do your match. But I had a lot of fun with it.
That's good.
But yeah, this is where we talk about the slightly controversial bit around it, which is, while I was waiting to play Drag and Drive in the queue, I overheard someone excitedly talking next to a Nintendo rep about, like, their excitement that there was a game about wheelchair basketball. And the Nintendo rep turned around and said to them, actually, we call them vehicles, not wheelchairs. And then I heard this said again to someone else. So I went and asked, I was like, is this something you've been officially told? Like, is this language used in the game? Do you know? And their response was, that's what we've been told to call them. And to continue this, that this is not just me that heard this, Chris Scullion mentioned on Blue Sky that he'd been at the Nintendo event a couple of days prior. Both of my experiences were at the Drag and Drive booth, so I had wondered originally, was this something told to people working on that booth? Chris Scullion had been, like, asked by a Nintendo person, like, oh, what's your favourite thing you've seen today? And he said, oh, I forget the name of it, but that wheelchair basketball one. To which the Nintendo rep somewhere else in the building was like, oh, no, we call them vehicles, not wheelchairs. Which suggests that every member of staff, no matter where in the London hands-on event they were stationed, had been briefed in advance by Nintendo, not just if you're talking about them, call them wheelchairs, but it seems like what they were told was, if someone calls those wheelchairs, you should correct them and tell them that we're calling them vehicles, not wheelchairs. And that's the bit that weirded me out, was like, look, if you want to avoid using the word wheelchairs yourself, if you're not going to proactively use it, like, that's kind of not great, but it's one thing. It's a different thing to correct people who call them wheelchairs, because it's like, it's very clearly wheelchair basketball.
Yeah.
And, like, I did wonder, was this like a term that I'm not familiar with? Like, do people in the sport call them vehicles? Like, is there something I'd missed? And I went and checked. Nope. The official sports organization is the National Wheelchair Basketball Association. I couldn't find any English language references to people who play wheelchair basketball referring to them as vehicles, or any movement of English language wheelchair users referring to their wheelchairs as vehicles and not wanting to call them wheelchairs.
Yeah.
I'm open to being corrected if I've missed something, but it does feel like Nintendo is trying to avoid saying the word wheelchair.
Yeah,
and that feels really gross.
It feels disabled is a bad word all over again.
Yeah.
It feels like the able-bodied community or bigger, wider society is like, no, don't say the word disabled. Don't say something so mean about yourself. Say special needs. Say different abled. And all of these things that other people put on us to make them feel comfortable because they don't like it. And
when we were doing the GA Conf episode the other week, and that person used the phrase differently abled in that talk, it was like a day or so after I'd been at this Nintendo thing, and that's what it made me think of. Was it's like, oh, it's you don't want to use the word disabled because you think it's a bad word, or like, I don't know, did Nintendo want to avoid having like angry gamers calling the game woke or whatever? Because like, angry gamers online are still going to consider this game woke. It's very clearly wheelchair basketball.
And we had a talk when we were at GA Conf, you and me, about like, can this be a cultural thing? Because what is mean to say in one language is not mean to say in another language. Like, say the word handicapped. That one has so many different connotations, even in between different English-speaking countries. Some countries are like, nope, you do not call any person that. Some countries are just like, yeah, that's what we call people. Some people call it themselves. So I am wondering, is this a Japanese culture thing? But then I need a Japanese disabled person to tell me, because I don't know that.
So I spoke to at least one Japanese disabled person who was not aware of that term being used. I did speak to one person who claimed that there is a wheelchair basketball manga that perhaps uses the word vehicles to refer to its wheelchairs, and that might be, but I've not been pointed to what the name of that manga is, or somewhere where I can see it or see a translation that would allow me to fact check that. So I don't know if that's accurate. And as I say, I'm very open to the fact that there might be a cultural, like, there might be something somewhere that has gotten lost in translation. But I don't think that changes the fact that, like, here in English-speaking territories, there are negative connotations to correcting people, steering them away from the word wheelchair.
And
over here feels like you think disability is a dirty word.
And even though, like, it is weird also because, like, if this is the case, because I think it's just important to have, like, the talk about it can be something different. But even if that is the case, there is still a mistake done. Because when you localize for language, it's really, really important to understand context of language. And no matter if the reason is cultural differences, then they have missed the point when they translated this into English, and understand that they have missed the point of what does English-speaking people use. And it's the same that I've been talking about before, like how when Twitch auto translated things into Norwegian and called disabled turned off instead of the Norwegian word for disabled, because technically those are the same in Norwegian. But
you disabled the electricity, that sort of use of it.
So like then anyways, like, even if it is less of a hard and icky truth to it, it's still a mistake done, and it's still something going like, hey, you need to do your due diligence, especially like the same way when if you make a game in a culture you're not completely part of 100%, you also need to do your due diligence.
You know what? I haven't talked about this aspect of this thing that went down elsewhere, just because like it felt like it was going to be a fight to get into other places, but I feel like I can talk about it here because this is the accessibility place. You know what really rubbed me the wrong way about the first time that a Nintendo person corrected wheelchair to vehicle?
What?
It's because it was a family where the child was using a wheelchair who was excited about wheelchair basketball.
No!
That's like I didn't say this on Blue Sky because people were going to be like, "Oh, like that's." It sounds too dramatic to be real. It was a mum who was like, "Oh, he's so excited that like there's a game in which you're in a wheelchair and that's a thing." And the Nintendo person said, "Actually, we call them vehicles, not wheelchairs." And it was really like, oh.
Oh my god, that Nintendo person needs to get a course in human decency.
It was really tone deaf because it was very clear this was like a kid excited about like being represented and that just being sandbagged. And I was like, oh.
And also, if a person say something about themselves, and in a lot of cases, like parents, they talk a bit for the children. There is a lot of conversation about that. But anyways, in this case, they know what they themselves want to be called. Don't ever correct anybody for what they call themselves. Ever.
And like that's why I was like, I feel like there's some like this has got a bit weird, but yes, I was so reassured when Chris Scullion said he'd heard it said as well, because I was like, I don't want to be the only person making this claim that Nintendo was doing this, but at least one other person was able to confirm, at least in London, all of their staff seemingly were told, if someone says wheelchair, correct them to vehicle.
Yeah.
So
and there is also the possibility, is this just somebody on the top in London doing something mistakes?
Yeah.
But we did our due diligence, have tried and Google as much as we can about the game. Nowhere in the game it's called wheelchairs either.
Yeah. I reached out to Nintendo and tried to get comment. I reviewed all the footage in game. There is no point. So I checked the recording I got from the event of the demo, the Treehouse Live presentation, and the trailer for the game.
Yep.
They don't use the word wheelchair anywhere in any of those. They don't use the word wheelchair in the eShop description for the game. Like, I did the legwork to go, it feels like the game is just like avoiding the word wheelchair.
Yep.
And in combination, people in London working at that event were someone told them correct wheelchair to vehicle.
Yep.
It feels like there is something Nintendo-wide on this. There is evidence to suggest that this is a Nintendo decision. I've yet to find any evidence to say this is a rogue instance.
Yeah. Sadly.
So, sadly. But again, back to the game. Game was really fun. I like that they don't shy away from the contact nature of it, that like bashing like directly into someone else's wheelchair to get them to drop the ball is a contact aspect of the sport. I like that you have to, if your team has the ball, you have to try and take a shot of like trying to throw it through the net, at least within, I think, 14 seconds.
Yep.
And if you don't, like, you forfeit control of the ball and you have to like throw it up in the air, so that like you can't just hog the ball and hold on to it forever. It keeps the ball moving through the air and giving the other team opportunities to intercept. I like that they do a high contrast highlight around the ball so that you know where it is when it's off screen and what color team currently possesses the ball.
Yeah.
And that all the teammates are high contrast outlined. There's a lot of stuff I love about it. Last one very quickly that like is important to talk about for Switch 2 stuff. I played Metroid Prime 4.
Yep.
Which is the big game that I played for using mouse controls.
Yes.
Using a Joy-Con on its side like a mouse. General impressions, it works surprisingly well as a mouse, generally speaking. It's a very sensitive mouse. At least for Metroid Prime, you could go into the settings and turn up your mouse sensitivity really high. If you're someone that, like, wants to move your mouse a tiny amount and your character does a whole 180 turn and is facing backwards like a twitchy pro online shooter person, you can totally do that.
Yeah.
And the mouse sensitivity is high enough for that. I was really... This is a really stupid small detail, but I did really like this. Let's say you're holding your Joy-Con like normal, you're holding them like a controller, and you decide you want to go into mouse mode in Metroid Prime. You just put the controller down on the table and instantly it's in mouse mode. There's no setting
smooth.
you change.
That's
There's no there's no like waiting time while it loads. By the time it's touching the table, it's like, oh, I'm a mouse now. I understand. if because like I had trouble. So if you turn a Joy-Con on its side, you'll notice that like your index finger and middle finger are near the trigger and bumper, but your thumb is kind of near the face buttons and the analog stick. While playing Metroid Prime, you do still sometimes have to use your thumb to press some of the face buttons that are now on the side. And I occasionally found that a little awkward for some, like, platforming bits. So I would, like, oh, it's time to do some, like, morph ball platforming. I'll pick up the controller, do my morph ball platforming. Oh, it's back to a shooting section, I'll put it back down and I'll start shooting. And that was very smooth.
Nice.
Also, if you're someone who is not going to be sat at, like, a desk playing... I was wearing just, like, plain black leggings, no, like, not like jeans or something that would, like, give differences in texture for, like, a mouse to pick up on. I had no trouble just using it as a mouse on my leg.
And I did read somewhere that somebody also had tried it on jeans and it worked for them.
Yeah, like, jeans I would expect would be the kind of trousers it would work well with. But yeah, just, like, very plain black, no pattern to it leggings. Zero problem. It worked great. Which means, like, if you're someone who's going to be playing in bed, for example, you should be able to just, like, use the mouse on your lap and it shouldn't be a problem. I had, like, a mental cognitive barrier getting into this game at first, because putting it down in mouse mode, my thumb was near the analog stick, and my thumb being near an analog stick kept wanting to use the analog stick to turn, even though I was using it as a mouse, which took some getting used to. The same for having, like, a lock-on my left trigger, but having a mouse, and going between the mouse is moving the camera versus the mouse is moving a reticle on screen, but it's not moving the camera because I'm locked on. By the time I finished the demo, that felt great, but it's a bit of a cognitive learning curve. The big thing is it's quite narrow in the hand. And that narrowness in the hand is going to be awkward. I really hope we see a company produce, like, just a regular mouse with 4 buttons on the side of it, like 4 thumb buttons, that can be used as a right Joy-Con or as a right or left Joy-Con for mouse mode games. Because I really liked playing this in mouse mode, and the Joy-Con works, but I would just have a more comfortable time long term with something slightly less narrow.
It just watching the videos I've seen, I would had seriously problems with cramping in my hands with this. So yeah, it is what it is.
One thing I can confirm, my 3D printed mouse peripheral does work.
Yay!
I asked a couple of Nintendo people if I could try it, and they were like, no, we're not allowed to let you test anything that isn't Nintendo approved. There was one very nice person on one booth who was like, yeah, go ahead. He was very... I had a chat with him about accessibility stuff, and he was very excited and was like, yeah, go ahead. I was like, thank you.
That's cool.
And the Joy-Con does fit in there, so... At least there's one option for a 3D printed thing to give you something a bit sturdier to pop your hand on. So yeah, that was the Switch 2. I'll try and very quickly some of the other games. I've played a good amount of Clair Obscure Expedition 33. Which we talked about a while ago, being excited by but a bit concerned about accessibility-wise. That game, absolutely fantastic story-wise. I am so hooked on it narratively.
I've heard so many people saying that.
It's one of the best written and acted video games I've ever played. For anyone who knows nothing about it, it's set in a world where 67 years ago, a giant woman appeared and painted the number 100 on a mountain, and anyone aged 100 or older instantly turned to dust. And every year she comes back and paints one number lower every year on the mountain. And that number's now down to 33. And you are a group of people going off on an expedition to try and stop her painting more numbers on the mountain, because, like, there's so few people left alive to be able to try and stop this. The combat system is really heavily centered around dodging and parrying incoming enemy attacks. It is a turn-based RPG, but enemies do really big damage, and the game is very centered around you need to be avoiding taking that damage where possible. The game does not have a standalone option for increasing your window of like your parry and dodge windows. If you put the game on easy, it does increase your parry and dodge windows, but they're still pretty tricky.
Yeah.
What I will say for people is I do have some advice if you want to get into playing this and are finding it difficult. Try turning off the music in game. There is an audio cue that plays that tells you when to dodge or parry attacks that's kind of buried in the music. If you turn the music off, it gives you something easier to listen for and to know what the cue is that tells you when's a good time to parry and dodge. I would also say you can build your character in such a way to not need to do parrying and dodging.
Yeah.
If you are having trouble with it. To give a vague example, I've been playing around with having a party that is only one character, and her best weapon gets stronger the higher her defense is, so I've just been pouring points into defense, which means she can get hit quite a few times, and that's fine.
The proper time.
But I've also gone into... There's abilities you can equip to characters, and I've been equipping her with things like... usually, you get more like points to spend on doing your special moves by successfully dodging or parrying.
Yeah.
But you can give them special abilities where it's like every time you take damage, you get more points for your special abilities. So you can make it so you're getting the special ability points you need just by standing there and taking hits.
Yeah.
And things like that can definitely help if you're struggling with the parrying and dodging mechanics. But it's still going to be a struggle for some people. It's not. It's a game that is not built in a way to accommodate if you just fundamentally aren't getting on well with dodging and parrying.
Yeah.
And that is a shame. Very quick last ones. I played a very interesting game that I really want people to check out. With one accessibility caveat. It's called 1000X Resist. And it is largely a visual novel. It is voice acted. It is a very interesting game, maybe 10, 12 hours long, about... How do I even sum this up? You are part of a community in an underground city, and the surface has been taken over by, like, aliens and disease. And you are part of this group of, like, all-female religious believers in this figure called the All-Mother. And it is this game that explores the ways that members of minority groups will sometimes turn on each other in the hopes that they'll come for me last.
Yeah.
An exploration of, like, the early years of COVID. It's an exploration of, like, the intersection of religion and America's ways that their police force is allowed to lie to people to coerce confessions out of them. It is an exploration of the people who try and protest for their beliefs and the difficulty in feeling like you've achieved much through that.
Yeah.
It's one of the most impressive stories in a game I've ever played. It is beautiful, it's wonderful, I highly recommend it. It's janky.
Yeah.
And I played it on Switch, and the frame rate gets really rough on Switch when you are in this... There's this one central area, it's a big building with a garden in the middle, and at least on Switch, the frame rate is really bad in there, and it made my motion sickness really bad.
Oh no.
I got through it by, like, avoiding most of the optional side conversations and just getting to my objective as quick as I could to get out of that area.
Yeah.
Which is a shame, because enjoying all of the side dialogue is, like, so much of what the point of the game is. I got through it, and I'm glad I played it, but if you're gonna play it, maybe play it on PC, on a good PC, to mitigate some of that motion sickness, because the inconsistent frame rate, particularly on Switch, cannot recommend it to people who are motion sickness prone. Yeah, we can probably leave it there on stuff we've played. I have a bunch more things. I played too many things recently.
I see you have played a lot of them on your stream as well, though, so people can join you over there and see more.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, should we talk about a couple of newsy bits?
Absolutely.
Uh,
Starting on top with the PS5 audio boost, including a
yes.
voice boost.
Yeah. Do you know much about this story?
Nope.
Okay, so there is a new update that has come to the PS5. It's available for everyone. It's in the most recent firmware update that's happened. And if you've got your PlayStation audio going through headphones, you've got headphones plugged into your DualSense, there is now the system level option to boost certain parts of the sound profile. So what that allows you to do is, like, if you are someone who struggles, like, if you've lost some of your hearing and you struggle to hear high frequency sounds, maybe you struggle with low frequency sounds, maybe mid frequency sounds, you can boost that part of the audio mix, like, in all games, in all system level features, like, system wide, you can boost that part of the audio mix so that the thing you struggle to hear is more in line with the rest of your hearing. You can also do this by specific ear. So if one of your, like, oh, it's only my left ear that struggles with high-pitched sounds, you can just boost high-pitched sounds in the left ear. Which is, like, from a hearing loss perspective, really, really cool.
Yeah.
I got specifically excited about this because one of them is a voice boost, and this is the one for boosting the mid-range sounds, which is usually where voices are mixed in the audio mix. This is sort of advertised as a way to make dialogue louder in the mix of audio, just generally in games, whether they support that as a feature or not, which is great for me as an autistic person who struggles to pick dialogue out when there's other sounds competing with dialogue. Being able to make dialogue the loudest thing in the audio mix, so helpful for me.
I can imagine.
And I've been so happy since this feature dropped last week. It has been a real game changer.
I'm glad to see PlayStation just continuously doing things like this. They are just rolling.
They're doing a really good job of implementing system level stuff to go, what can we do to compensate for if games themselves aren't offering accessibility options?
Yeah.
Can we make every game on our platform a bit more accessible? That's so good.
It's just really, really nice.
We also have a bit of, I think it's good news, but with some caveats. Do you want to talk about Valve announcing accessibility tags for Steam?
Yeah, so in the same way we have seen previous organization doing this, Valve has now come out and said that on Steam now, people can also then have accessibility tags. And it's not just a tag where, like, oh, you just go in and you pick out some. It is actually a step-by-step like guide you go through to actually properly make sure that you do it correctly and that you know what you're saying your game is. This is brilliant because this is also something they have said that the user can actually now search for. So say you will only want to see games that have subtitles, you can now tick that off. So you only see games that has it, which is this, for me, I want to say, is a huge plus, with all, of course, the regular negativity that I said with the last time we heard something about this, with, like, I'm not the biggest fan of standardization, but in all, I think this is a good thing. The problem, on the other hand, the, like, criticism that has come out, is that why do Valve do this when we now already have accessibility tags from what is it called? Accessibility game.
The Accessible Games Initiative.
Yes.
Yeah.
Why is Valve now coming out with this? Is why?
Yeah. To be clear, the issue is that as good as Valve's setup wizard is in terms of explaining, like, when we say this feature, this is what we mean. Does your game do this thing that we are describing? Yes or no? And, like, it's helping make sure that developers understand what they are labeling their game with. The issue is the Accessible Games Initiative a couple of weeks ago back at GDC laid out, like, this industry-wide initiative to go, this is what we're going to call these accessibility tags, and what the meaning of those tags is going to be as like a broad industry initiative. And Valve is not using that wording.
Yes.
That's kind of where the problem is that Valve is calling these features different things and describing them in different ways.
Yeah.
And
it can make the consumer be confused of what is what. And that is a problem. I had a lot of talk about this online, and I don't know if I agree with people that are angry at Valve at this point.
Yeah, I think overwhelmingly this is a positive.
Yes.
I think this is a positive that could have been done better, should have been done better, could be corrected to be better.
Yeah.
But I think overall, I'm not in the camp of people where I'm like, oh, you shouldn't have done it if you weren't going to do it to that new standard. Yes. I am of the belief anything that gets more... Like, because here's the thing. If we go back, like, 2 months, PlayStation and Xbox had support for accessibility store tags. Their wordings were different, but they both offered them.
Yeah.
At that point, was like, yeah, it'd be great if they were consistent, but what really matters is that on both stores, I can find the information I need in the store without having to look elsewhere.
Yeah.
And I feel the same way here. I'm like, this is one additional store where people now have that information. Developers are being given clear guidance on what it means to say they have that support. This is a step toward the whole industry supporting the idea of accessibility store tags, and I think that is great.
But
yes, I would prefer it if like they had a moment of reflection and went, maybe we should update our wordings to match the Accessible Games Initiative. But even if they don't, I still think this is a positive step forward.
Yeah, and I also think like what I have been mostly talking about is that people just assume this is done by being like a teenager going, I don't want to. That is a weird thing to assume. Like, assuming malice is like, and we have to remember that in every industry, every business, there is politics. That will always be the thing. Like, you cannot get about it. And the thing I think I want to like point out in this is that a lot of people think this is done by just Steam going, oh, we're going to just make our own thing. We don't know that. We don't know, is this something they have been working out for a long time? We don't know if they were even invited to be part of the Accessibility Game Initiative, because a lot of people are saying like, but why didn't they just do as the Accessibility Game Initiative? But forcing, or not forcing, but saying to people, this is the standard and we are just, everybody's going to do that now. That is not how it works. If if not everybody has been asked to be part of the table, you cannot just expect people. That is not how standards work. Standards does not come about somebody going, this is now the standard. Standards come about you are giving the consumer a lot of opportunities and then seeing what people actually use. And
we talked about this at GA Conf the other week. That talk that mentioned if you try and create a new standard, often what you end up it's like, this is the standard that you will unify all other standards, and now you've just added another competing standard to the table.
And the thing is that I think it is a bit weird to or not weird, that is the wrong word to use. It is a bit, I don't think it is the right thing to just expect a company to use something another company has made, and then just presume that they're doing this without just to be mean, because that is what it seems like people online are thinking that, and I think that is wrong, because we don't know. Was Steam, Valve ever even asked to join with the rest of the gang, or are they just assumed to now have to follow? Like, no.
I will say this about Valve. Valve is famously insular.
Yes, they are.
They as a company have historically been very focused on, we're doing our own thing and we're not really paying much attention to what the rest of the industry is doing.
Yeah.
And whether you consider that a reason to give them some slack for not being, maybe they didn't notice what had happened with the Accessible Games Initiative, or whether you view that as a reason to criticize them and go, if you were going to do a big thing like this, you really should have paid attention to, is anyone else in the industry trying to do this at the moment, and what are they doing? You know, where your opinion falls on that, it can differ, but I think there is an argument to be made for Valve historically does not march to the beat of the rest of the industry's drum, and that is just kind of how they are.
Yeah, but
I think
it has been really disappointing to see people being so happy by accessible game initiatives, like praising it up to the sky, being almost like to the degree of almost on Twitter mean about what Valve is doing. That I don't think is fair at all. Like, and I'm saying even if we have to look at it like as the biggest sum, that the industry will end up with now is more accessibility out there.
Agreed. I am of the belief that, sure, it is great to say, hey, Valve, this new feature you've done, we're really glad you've done it. Would you consider revising the wording to line up with the initial Accessible Games Initiative? I think that is a very reasonable request to have.
Yes.
I think being upset that this has happened, it feels counterintuitive. Because, like, at the end of the day, most people playing games aren't going to, like, as much as I commend the Accessible Games Initiative for trying to have consistent wording industry-wise, I think by far the more important thing is to get every storefront offering accessibility store tags. And if that comes in the form of differently worded ones, I honestly think that is more good than harm.
Yeah. And also, I think when this is out, when we start seeing it, I would absolutely be critical about, like, hey, you're using the wrong words. But then that is not I think that's not a good critique of the whole concept. But absolutely, when it come out and it's sort of feels that it doesn't work, 100% critique it, because that is like constructive criticism and things that for Valve is really, really easy to fix.
Yeah. Other than that, we had a couple of other quick stories.
Yep.
Xbox have announced that all of their consoles and controllers are getting more expensive.
Yep.
Which is unsurprising. PlayStation had news like this a couple of weeks ago that their prices were raising globally.
Yep.
But a thing that you pointed out was all of their Xbox's controllers are getting more expensive, with the exception of the Xbox Adaptive Controller and Xbox Adaptive Joystick.
Yeah, so far we haven't seen anything. It might be, without being properly sure, that it might be that they have just forgotten about it, and it will, and it isn't part of their, like, list. But the weird thing was that they, like, absolutely said accessories, and then that is what they normally used as the term for their accessibility things. So I feel like it would be weird if they did forget it. But so don't be surprised if there will be a change, but so far so good.
I am quietly hoping that this is a case of them recognizing accessibility peripherals are prohibitively expensive already, and, like, the number of these we are selling is small enough in the grand scheme of things that we can eat a slight profit loss on them to keep the price where it is for disabled consumers.
Yeah.
I quietly want to believe that that's what it is. Time will tell.
Time will tell.
But, like, it would be really nice if a company was considering, we have to increase the prices on all the things we're doing. No, accessibility stuff should be an exception to that.
Yeah. Other news is that Godot, or however people pronounce
Godot.
Oh, my developer friends is going to be angry at me now. They improve accessibility support, including screen readers. And they also have announced that they are, like, really for accessibility. They're like, when they have this announcement, they said, like, accessibility is the future, which was really, really cool. So that has integrated an kit that is easier for the people developing to add accessibility stuff, including screen readers.
Yeah. And it seems like this is the start of an ongoing initiative of they want to build tools into the engine that make supporting accessibility features really easy, like on a SDK level, which is great news.
Yeah.
Other ones we've got quickly. Days Gone Remastered came out.
Yep.
And that I have my grumbles about like including accessibility features in paid upgrades for games.
Yep.
I've got a video about that. Go watch that over at Laura K. Bars on YouTube. But that being said, Days Gone Remastered does now have accessibility features that weren't in the original release of that game.
Yeah.
Most notably, high contrast mode is in there now, and it works pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
There's a few others, but I'm always glad to see games getting more accessibility features than they originally had.
Yeah.
Even if I wish that they weren't being sold alongside, do you want slightly shinier graphics?
Yeah. It's a dual sword of like, hey, we now have the possibility to remake this, we should add more, and we do it. But on the other hand, this should be something you had added in the original game. With some games, that is not a possibility because they're so old, or they were on a controller when that wasn't possible. Then other things is a bit more like, no, you should have. This game isn't that old.
So some of the things that are in here are interesting. You can change the speed of gameplay, so you can slow down the overall game speed.
Yeah.
One of the ones that's really interesting, I played a bit of this. I'm someone who gets motion sick, so changing field of view is something that, like, when it's an option, I tend to do.
Yes, same.
This has a field of view slider, and you can increase the field of view. But it's really interesting. It acknowledges the game was not designed for a wider field of view.
Yeah.
You can increase it, but the more you increase it, the more you risk the frame rate might not be like locked to 60 frames a second or 30 in quality mode.
Yeah.
That you might get some dips in frame rate if you increase the field of view. And that, like, hey, we're going to warn you about that risk in advance. You can still increase the FOV. But if you're someone for whom inconsistent frame rate is a motion sickness trigger, you might want to be considerate. You might want to, like, be cautious how much you increase the field of view.
Yeah.
And I think, like, it's great that they are aware of that and warn people, hey, this might make it better for you, it might make it worse for you. Experiment with how much you use this feature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is worth to note that these updates also will be on the PC version.
Yes,
and
I've been told most of them. I don't know what ones aren't coming to PC, but apparently most of them are coming to PC.
And also that, like, Bend Studio, which is the studio behind this, actually said we're striving to create experience that leave a lasting impact on our players. Which I think, like, your criticism about like remakes is really good on this. But then, okay, now you have done it now. Make sure you do it continuously in your next upcoming games. I am willing, like, I am a big fan of remakes, so I'm willing to look like past that and the disability tax and stuff. But that with the caveat of, like, now you've added it, you have no reason to not add it in the next one.
Yeah, exactly. A couple of other quick ones. You can now autocomplete QuickTime events on any difficulty. You used to be able to only do it on easy.
Yeah.
You can remap the controls from within the game. You can now get audio cues for where collectibles are.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the most of them. There's other bits. They have their own dedicated accessibility menu and their own, like, accessibility startup quick select stuff as well, which is good now.
And you can read about it on the PlayStation blog if you don't want to buy the game to check it out.
And then the last one we've got on the list this week is World of Warcraft is introducing Rotation Assist, which the short version of this is, if you've ever played a lot of an MMO, you end up being sort of like expected to use all of your abilities in a very specific order. There's usually like a optimal way that you're like, okay, I do this, and then while that's cooling down, I do this, and I do this, and I do this, and it can get quite cognitively overwhelming to learn what is the pattern that I'm supposed to be doing my abilities in.
Mm-hmm.
This new feature, allows you to basically have the game show you what the next ability in your cooldown that you should probably be using is.
Yep.
And to optionally set it so you just press one button and it'll use the next thing in the order that you should be using next. So that rather than having to have this whole bar and, like, remember what things are which and press the right buttons at the right time, you can just go, okay, I press this one button and it does the next thing in the order of what my character should be doing in combat.
Yeah.
Which I think is really cool. Just as a way of, like, cognitively and mechanically simplifying engaging with slightly overwhelming MMO combat.
Yeah, and MMOs in themselves are, like, of course, if you played it for years and years, they are quite easily, but for any new players, they are a beast and a half. So yeah, everything that can help is a good thing.
There is one thing I'm not a huge fan of with this, and I get it, but the short version is, if you're using this setting, the game does give you an extra 0.2 seconds of cooldown on your abilities. So your abilities cool down slightly slower. The idea being this is to compensate for you are taking less time to mechanically keep on top of your abilities and press them. I'm not a big fan of having a penalty to accessing an accessibility feature. But, like, I can understand them feeling like unless they do this, it might trivialize late game content.
Yeah. I can see it. I don't agree with it, but I can see why they did it. But yeah.
I'm curious how much that in practice, how much is a 0.2 second increase in cooldown? How dramatic does that feel in late game content? And I'm not enough of an active World of Warcraft player at this point to know how big of a penalty that feels in practice, but I think that's everything we've got for the news this week.
Yeah, I thought this was going to be a short episode, but here, over an hour later. We can never stop talking, Laura.
We are just constantly talking. But if people want to hear you also continuously talking in other places, where can people find you on the internet?
Oh, people can find me everywhere on Ananaima Revia, especially on TikTok, Instagram, on YouTube, where I update you on the latest accessibility news. And Laura, where can they find you?
People can find me at Laura K Buzz pretty much everywhere on the internet. Patreon, that's the one that pays the bills. Blue Sky, YouTube, just find me at Laura K Buzz. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching. We hope you've enjoyed. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode of Control Alt Access. Thank you very much.
Bye.